And I think that little icon was creepy enough. Like growling at the camera and shaking it, try to make it blur the image. Took a couple of takes, but it worked. Anyway, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, orchestra. Whatever the hell it is, wherever the hell you are, welcome back to the Lost Begottens Abnormal Bald Spots of Science. Here at the Easy Reefers Fish Room. Where? Let me just get right to the point. I'm out of cigarettes and money. That's really the point of this broadcast. At least I'm honest. Usually. But speaking of a recent fib, one of the rare fibs I've actually told on this channel, for obvious strategic reasons, the housing market seems to be having some issues. It's funny, yeah. What a coinkydink. I've been talking about getting into the housing market for, I don't know, about 6 months now. Right? What was the little note card said? The past 5 months, new home sales have declined. And especially lately, it's not looking good with the whole Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac basically not processing loans. Well played. You see, the most sensitive economic indicator is the housing market. The most unreliable indicator that people like to overuse is the stock market. Both of which can be manipulated by foreign means. But I don't think there's ever been a situation in which purposeful and intentional manipulation has come from within the United States government. But we've got it going on across the board, trying to sabotage our economy. It's just odd how you would think that Donald Trump, last I checked, he was a real estate guy? Yeah, real estate guy. Would have maybe provided some incentives. Something for like investors and shit, you know, like what Republicans do, right? All the fucking money they gave away, and they didn't do any tax breaks and shit for real estate. They didn't like go in and streamline the whole fucking loan process. And really? How did they not do that? Oh yeah, I forgot, he's a fucking Russian agent. Now it makes sense. I'm not saying it's because of little old me and my plans to use housing to try to launch a new social media site, basically. fucking Matrix has you. It's time to accessorize. Hold your tongue just right. You gotta get the little inverted bunny ears. Pinch them like so. And you got your smooth top do-rag from a bandana. Anyway. So, will it be obnoxious for cigarette money? Will tell corny jokes for cigarette money. Guy walks into a bar. Ow. Two guys walk into a bar. You'd think that second one would have ducked. A priest, a rabbi, and a preacher walk into a bar. Bartender looks at him and says, "What is this, some kind of joke?" Wah, wah. How do you get a Republican and a Catholic to fight to the death? Throw a little boy between them. Hey, that could have been worse. Could have been anti-Semitic. I could have said throw a penny between them. Simba. Hello to Simba. What you doing? Oh, the kitten. The giant fucking... He makes my hand look so normal-sized. My hand is not normal-sized. Even with my giant head, it's still, yeah. Huh. So it does seem to you like they've sabotaged the housing market? You know, I would hate to say that it's all because of little old me. I mean, it's obviously it's got better and greater implications if they can suppress me and make a big fucking stifling of the economy of any Western country. They'll do it, you know. I guess I just inspire them on how to fuck with us. I'm going to read this one for you. A wife is fed up with her husband, who never listens. She's at home washing the floor, and he walks in with his muddy boots. So she loses it and kills him. In court, the first officer on the scene is being questioned. "Did you arrest this woman immediately?" he was asked. "No," he replied. "Why not?" they asked. "I waited for the floor to dry first." How's it going? Oi, 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 oi. Let me go see what time my wife needs to be up. Simba. If you're gonna be inside, you might as well clean up all the food that's sitting all over the damn place. Simba cat, how did you get so fucking fat? Will he break what he sits on? No, he's too lazy to get on it in the first place. All right. Blowing my nose tonight. Ah. Yo.
Here. Cigarettes.
Oh, my neighbor's giving me a couple cigarettes. Bless your heart.
Wish I could buy y'all a pack, but man, we broke as shit too. Alright, I'm gonna go, tell her we're gonna be ready at like 9.
Okay.
We gotta go to the food bank today, so.
Right.
Alright, I'm gonna go chill.
Okay.
I have to go back to sleep today, so whatever. Alright, bye.
Later. So, most mornings I go and take one of her kids to the bus, and then she comes and borrows the car to take the other kid to the bus, which basically warms the car up for my wife when she has to go, so worked out pretty good. I use my Accord in the mornings to save gas for the first 3 kids. And then she'll use the CRV for the last one. Anyways. Accent? What accent? Yes, that's how everybody around here sounds. You know, my accent fades in and out, but I don't know how much or how little anymore. That just sounds normal to me now. It's weird, like looking at my face on camera. It's so much less distracting to just have a beard. My face is like silly putty. Okay, I'll stop. Not like silly putty per se. It's just like putty that's silly. Yeah, I know mine's not nearly as country. I gotta like try to be country to really be country. And even then, I don't even know how well I do it. I still sound a lot Lonian. If you go and listen to the people in Houston, I probably sound a little more like them than anything. Houston is weird. It's like a mix between a Texas accent and a Canadian accent or something. I don't know. Like, there's so much Dutch and Russian settlement there. German and Russian, also known as Dutch. Like, I tell you what. If I smoke this last cigarette, I'll save it for my wife. I'll save it for my Okay. Where fuck are Dutch people from? Is it Denmark and Holland? Or is it Deutschland? Dutchland. Holland. But the Denmark is Dutch too, right? Or is that Danish? That's Danish. Danish and Dutch are different things. Very West Germany also. So Bavaria. That would make sense. Yeah, tribe of Dan. Old High German. Mixing with Dan. They gave them refuge when Sweden was replaced. There's some interesting Saxonite invasion era kingly politics regarding Sweden back then, I think. That might correlate what I'm sensing. Something's like almost coming to mind. The area bordering Holland and Belgium. Yeah. Which one's on which? Yeah. See, American. I don't know for sure. I'm like struggling to picture it. And instead of a modern map, I'm picturing Civ 2. That's the most hilarious thing to me about me trying to remember cities in Europe and countries and shit in Europe. Is that really the only educational advantage I have as far as that goes is the fact that I played Civ 2, the World War II simulator. Like, oh yeah, I remember conquering that. That's just so stupid. Anyways, what you got there? You see, like, what's interesting is in Europe, Dutch accounts for a little tiny swath of land. Right? Most of those places are the back points of where conquest was coming from. So, like, if you just directionalize conquest of Europe, and you go the farthest point away from it, that isn't the British Isles, and there's the Dutch. Right? Almost all of North America, Australia, and a whole lot of islands, all Dutch. Not British. That came later. The British apparently got power over the Dutch in Europe, and somehow all the Dutch colonies became British colonies. And there's been this propagandized history of them being founded by Britain when they weren't. And the majority of the settlers in these places are Dutch, not British. I mean, do Americans look British to you? No. They look Dutch. I mean, you've got clear semblance of Dutch, Italian, Irish, French, Spanish, Iberian, Spain, not modern Spanish. Yes, bingo. The whole thing is purposely confusing. Australia, supposedly founded by inmates, right? A penal colony. As if there were no other islands. The fucking other side of the world. We're gonna risk our soldiers and our boats and all the supplies that it takes to get them there. We're gonna spend all this money to get prisoners to Australia? How the fuck is that even an idea? Who? I know this is what most people will tell you is fact. But I can't force myself to be stupid enough to believe that shit. I just can't do it. This is, wait, hold, red flag there. This is logistically impossible. No matter how many times you write it down that it happened. It's like telling me that Humpty Dumpty shat the Great Wall of China. You just, no. You just don't. Fucking physics, science, like logic. Wrong. No, doesn't work that way. Sorry. Try again. But you've got a massive initial settlement of Australia. Not by the British, by the Dutch. Hmm? Slavery. Very likely. I suppose if the Georgian British wanted to compete with the Dutch refugees, that's what they were. They weren't settlers. They were refugees. from as far away as Serbia, migrating to Americas and to Australia with the Dutch. That furthest point away from conquest, Spain, Vienna, they come almost to Germany, they come halfway up France. You're looking at the area between Denmark and Holland, and Denmark itself as being the last port of Gaul. Gaul being the word for this Dutch civilization that occupied the Americas. And it wasn't until the late 1600s, early 1700s, I believe, that the Spanish came. How does the descriptive form of Portugal become Portuguese? Why not Portudux? No, wait a minute. Anyways, this is what I'm smoking. They're kind of disgusting, but they're better than nothing. It's $1.50 for a pack of those things. They make you feel sick after a while. So they're probably not too good for you. But this is what I'll be trying to choke down. Either until I get a donation or Friday. And it's what? Tuesday. Oh boy. Today was not a well planned out week. This was not a well planned out week. Yeah, it's like a cigarette. The only saving grace of them is that it's menthol. Like, I don't think that makes it something I can choke down. Anyways, I tell you what, Hamlets. I don't think, like I said, you know, like, I would never tell you I could beat the shit out of somebody unless they stood very little chance. If there was a chance of somebody defending themselves against me, I would say that would take a lot of effort. But I still have a hard time with most singular individuals acquiescing to the unlikely chance that they'd defeat me in a little game of fisticuffs. Because, you know, I'm just fucking special. I'm a special kind of very well coordinated crazy. But there's guys like I would run from to avoid fighting them, you know? And then there's guys that I would have to have a really good reason to probably still get my ass beat. Maybe not. Maybe not. Like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, he'd probably beat my ass, but maybe not. If I had good enough motivation, and he lacked motivation, you see? I don't know what that's about. I'm gonna get my wife up. What I was gonna say is, when it comes to like business planning, I've been pretty realistic. I was never sitting there acting like breeding perculas was going to make me a fortune. I never thought Easy Reefers was going to be a high profit model. I've always acknowledged that these are going to be long-term hard work kind of things. And I've never bullshitted anybody about the likelihood of it getting done. But I said I'd fucking destroy Google. And no real estate market manipulation is going to do anything but help me do that. Murphy, it's hard time to wake up before. I'll get your coffee for you. Alright. So, I saved you one cigarette there. Conway's on there for a big moment.
Morning.
I think there's 2 cigarettes in your truck. Trade you some Pall Malls. You sure? She's letting me have the last of the real cigarettes in the house. There's 2 of these in her truck. And I just bartered the Pall Malls that our neighbor just gave us. because my wife is next to me. Simba, you gonna call your fat ass up here? Get her off the camera before she hurts me.
I'm going to hurt you with the way my fucking hair looks right now. Are you fucking kidding me?
Simba. You're just gonna start digging your massive claws into my flesh, aren't you? Oh boy. Oh yeah, good. My penis isn't right there. Okay. Okay. There's things that I need. Ow. Yeah, my fingers too, man. Jeez. Ow. How do you have claws that far back on your hand? Oh my god. Fuck. Ah, look at his massive rear claws. Holy shit.
I have to go make a phone call. I had known that we were going to be in this predicament, and I had talked to your stepdaddy. Or I had messaged your stepdaddy yesterday, and he messaged me at 3:45 this morning and said to call him.
Okay.
Well, because he fussed at me the last time we were in this predicament, and I didn't
All
ask
right.
him for help. So.
Alright. Oh, text Joey, say it's a 93.
What's a 93?
My car. I can't find the fucking climate control knob that I've had in that box for all these years. Ain't that... You know the little knob on the old Hondas that just adjusts your fan motor from 1 to 4, you know? Well, mine's been broken. Okay. Hi, Lacey. Good morning. Well, the little dealy fucker, let's use the Death Star as an example. The little dealy fucker, where it goes in, there's a little metal piece that actually performs the hooked turning action. Okay. Now, the plastic has been loose and falling out. Okay. But the little metal fucker on the inside has remained inside. So, just because I was having a little difficulty fitting needle nose, the ones that I tried when I could find them, when I thought of it and was motivated, before I said, fuck it, I'll wait until it just falls out itself, or until I get around to it, that kind of thing. There's been a number of little projects on the car that just, they've been put off until they can be all done at once. Well, just little knick-knack things, like the fucking knob and the gluing of the interior panels that's just been put off forever.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, that she was supposed to do.
I'm sorry.
And I think she was supposed to do this knob too. But anyway.
No, you didn't. No. The knob was not under my jurisdiction. The knob was your jurisdiction.
Oh,
the
no.
paneling was mine.
I think you got jealous because I did the doors and you were like, I'm going to do the AC knob. I told her I'd save it for you. But I don't know. I had tried to get it with one pair of pliers and needed like a more needly set of noses to get in there. Anyways. So the little fucking metal guy, fell the fuck out while I was driving with the AC on. Let me put it that way. With the AC on 2 or 3 maybe.
I'm gonna interrupt for a second. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. So now we got and start the car in the freezing ass morning and the fan's just already blowing. And I go and I look in my fucking Honda parts box, okay? Box. All the way in the corner, in the top back there. See, look, in the top corner. Nothing should be able to fuck with that. But is my little AC knob in there where it's supposed to be? Where I thought it was? Where I've known it was? For 5 years now? No. Of course not. I have so many random OEM brand new Honda parts in this fucking thing, and I can't find the one that I need. Like, you know, I got that Integra sitting outside. There's the place where the shift linkage comes in, and there's this rubber boot around it that on everybody's old Integra has gone brown and looks like shit. I got a brand new updated part number, black rubber, just waiting to go on there and look good and function. And I've got OEM shock mounts and fucking exhaust mounts and timing belt, fucking tensioners, fucking that OEM Integra timing belt cover. Got the GSR P72 VTEC power steering pump. And the fucking brackets that were so hard to find together. But the easiest thing that basically now has deinstalled itself. I just need to go out there and put the new one in. Can't find it. It's just fucking disappeared. It's so annoying. I don't even remember how much the part was. I think Joey's looking it up for me. But I'm worried that it's obsolete and like I can't get another one. Oh god, that would suck. I guess that would mean super gluing the old one? Yeah, super gluing the old one.
I just
Might
remembered
work.
my dream.
Ooh.
I had the weirdest dream. You were building us our house, though.
Cool.
But then we decided to go, me and my girlfriends were in my
Oh
dream.
jeez. Get
And
that out.
We
Fucking
decided
moron.
to go out of town for something. And we all piled up, and I was driving, and we were going to be gone for like a month. And I left all my medication at home. And then you woke me up. I was like panicking because we were already out of town. And I had none of my medicine with me.
You don't need all that shit. All I need is harmony. I can use magic.
I forgot where we were going, but we were
Bad
going
for you.
somewhere warm.
Warm.
Yeah, it's cold here. It's like God left the freezer door open overnight in Louisiana last night. Lane, get the fuck out of the Christmas tree.
The big sweet boy. Your hair is so Roxy Hart-esque. Not you, Sean.
Roxy Hart.
I didn't even realize that. That's awesome.
Roxy.
Simba, why is your nose so wet? Little mer. Oh, look at that little mer. Simba, what's with the brown stains right there? You been smoking blunts?
Roxy Hart. I'm gonna have that song. Thank you, Mr. Conway. By the way, I'm gonna have
That was
song.
Lacey.
Oh, Lacey. Sorry, I didn't know Lacey was. Hey, Lacey. Yeah, I'm totally gonna be like having Roxy Hart stuck in my head all day.
These claws.
Everybody's lips is gonna be Roxy.
The claws.
What'd she say?
I got Simba zoomed in. He's like, cut it out and pet me. Rolling blunts and smoking blunts. Who smokes the blunts?
We smoke the blunts. $15, little man. Put that shit in my hand.
If that money doesn't show, then you owe me, oh. My jungle love. Oh, we, oh, we. Oh, okay. That just happened.
He smokes the
I
blunts.
think it's time to put the camera the other way.
So now I'm gonna be singing those two
My
songs.
jungle love.
Oh,
Oh, we, oh, we, oh. I think I wanna know you, know you. And what?
I should have totally dressed up as Roxy Hart for Halloween now that
I'd try to do Richard Gere, but I'm just not Jewy enough in the face. Although, you know, I once dated a girl who looked just like Richard Gere.
B-I-double-L-Y. Yep, I know what I'm watching later. I'm watching Chicago later.
What's the first one?
What, the one that we like?
Pop, Cicero, Lipschitz. Is that it?
He had it coming.
He had it coming.
He had it coming all along. If you'd have been there, if you'd have seen it.
Blah, 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 blah. What?
We've done the same. I suppose you singing to me means you want food.
He had it coming. Yeah, sorry.
He had it coming. He had it coming
Wait.
all along. If you'd have
No. What's the one? Got a little motto, always sees me through.
been
When you're good to mama, mama's good to you. And that's when I realized that big black women were hotter than big white women. What? Sorry. Did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. I just said that to make Lacey moan while she laughed hysterically. Like one of them. Ho, 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 ho. Yeah, and it's like it brings out my inner Ethiopian or something. It's like, this one has food, you know, like. She had it coming. No, he had it coming. Somebody had it coming. She had him coming. Something, I don't know.
He ran into my knife 10 times. I said, you pop that gun one more time. And he did. So I fired 40 shots. He didn't
Anyways.
When you're good to mama, mama's good to you.
Your appointment today?
One. I have 2 appointments, one at 1 and one at 2.
I've been refining this more and more.
When you're stroking mama,
I added, or took away 2 feet from right here to make a little more room right here. This is going to be the aquaculture, the aquaponic company, right? So I'm probably going to have a row of fish tanks in there.
Cool.
Because that goes right across the heavy beam brace. So it'd be a good place for it. Anyways. So what was I talking about? Oh yeah, I was talking some mad shit. That's right. I'm good at that. What's that?
We were talking about stroking mama. When you're stroking mama, mama's stroking you.
Okay. No, I was talking about, like, I don't generally say I beat the shit out of somebody unless I could actually beat the shit out of them. Unlike most men, you know. And when it comes to basically me not being afraid of the Russians and Google combined, and saying that I had a plan that no matter what will ultimately lead to Google's destruction, I wasn't talking shit.
I fed you. I'm sorry that Simba's eating all your food, but I fed you.
Let me get him out. That's enough. Everybody say goodbye to Simba's. Alright, go on. Love you, drive safe. I love you, drive safe. My neck, my back. My neck, my back, my pussy and my crack. Now I'm gonna have that in Lacey's head all day. My neck, my back, my pussy, and my crack. You gotta be some old school ghetto to know what the fuck that is. You might have had to have lived around genuine black people. Excuse me, genuine black people. Yeah, Lacey all bouncing around getting sassy right now. But for some reason, she still hasn't clicked the like button. You keep forgetting. You'll be in that zone all day now. Fedelcivil stick hangsta, fedelcivil stick hangsta, fedelcivil stick, fedelcivil stick, fedelcivil stick hangsta. Oh, evil boy, why is your smolinga so big? All the better to love you with. No love, no love. If you can believe me, take a titty of my Tagawa season. I'm a ninja. Yo, my life is like a video game. Maintain what I'm in the. So, you're a ninja. Go. My blade swings free, decapitate a hater with amazing ease. This is not a game, boy, don't play with me. I work on my mark, scable like a wild fucking savage from the dark side of danger. Yin to the yang, totally high-tech ninjas, motherfucking big in Japan. Let's see. Seen the future, but I haven't got that thing in. Fuck. Blah, 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 blah. Damn it, I lost it. I had it for a second there. I am your butterfly. I need your protection. Be my samurai. I am your butterfly. I need your protection. Need your protection. Baby, 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 baby's on fire. Boom. Boom, boom. Baby's on fire. She's got me going something crazy. Said some manaya. And what's the other one? I think you freaky. Yeah, I like that one too. I think you freaky and I like you a lot. The newer ones, like, I don't know, they keep on getting more and more obnoxious. When they could fucking be making a killing off of trying to be more artistic, you know? Whoa, 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 wait a minute, Jesus Christ. Yo, honey, DJ High-Tech, shut this motherfucker being this nice. Back in the day, was wives and eyes. Little did they know what they was in for the motherfucker big surprise. Oh, man, I don't want to fucking... Oh. I've been wanting to put some sound in that accord just so I could bump the ant word in the ghetto, like for no reason. Sounds fun to me. Like, what you know about Evil Boy, son? Roll up on some fucking hood rats. Just fuck with them. Just because I know I'm the one white guy that don't get shot. You know, it helps to roll up and hand them a blunt, but, you know. Banana brains, you're the apple of my... The more DeAnt word comes out in recent years, the less I seem to know. It's all the shit from like 7 years ago and before that. Like 2009 to 2011, all them ones. I think Baby's on Fire and I think Baby's on Fire is probably the latest one that I fucking... probably the latest one. Isn't that the more recent one of the old ones? But obviously, the first time I heard fucking ninja, I'm like, this is my spirit animal. My blade swings free, decapitate a hater with amazing ease. This is not a game, boy, don't play with me. I work my mark, sail like a wild fucking savage from the dark side of danger. Yolandi's your spirit animal. Rich bitch. A motherfucking rich bitch. Ik nog zijn het hoofd misfit. Blaze said that shit. I think Blaze was actually from fucking South Africa. She like almost had a similar look. She was like Yolandi, but like a foot taller and a foot wider. Damn near the same haircut though. I had the fucking Chelsea hut cut. She had it mostly on the left side, and it was fucking pink and black. Bitch had sleeves from her fucking jaw to her wrists. I have another one. I have a lady. He likes to be under my sketchbook. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to fucking have my mouth on. Ah, that's so obnoxious. That's disgusting. I'm sorry. I apologize. Anyways. See, I'll keep the fucking... Yummy. Oh, yeah, you like that, huh? You want that right in your face, don't you, bitch? Oh. You ever seen that? Like, what the fuck is that? The fucking guy spits in the girl's face. Like, what, dude, you ran out of camp? Poor little porn stars, you gotta pretend they like it. Spit on my face and tell me that you love me. I'll spit on your face and tell you I love you too. I love to hear you gargle eyes. No, I can't rhyme. I can't rhyme that. I can't rhyme that. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just not watching like the full form videos or something. It's like he's like that one guy like runs out of cum and then he spits on her face to ruin her for the next guy. See, this to some people might seem really obnoxious. This is typical New Orleans conversation right here. That's probably what's really obnoxious about it. What? Yeah, because then you'll like be wanting to like have an umbrella up every time you're giving a blowjob. Like, don't spit on me, motherfucker. You're like traumatized and shit. Like I don't know, like and porn stars actually like that. I was like, does it make you miss your daddy? Like, was he a lefty or a righty? Okay, now I'm in full Rocky Horror joke mode. We got Columbia with her uneven tits. I'm gonna focus on them, and then it spawns this whole other series of jokes. After the crowd goes, "Daddy was a lefty." And that's not even just a down south joke. That's from the fucking San Francisco cast. Anyways, Magenta, Columbia, go and assist. Woof woof. I will entertain the cameraman with the world's largest hand job. In the power of the darkness of the blackest night, burning bright, what's up your ass? There's a guiding star that must hurt, no matter what or who you are. Flick your Bix. There's a light over at the Frankenstein place. There's a light burning in the fireplace. There's a light in the darkness of every blighty's night. Sing to us, O hairless one. Darkness must flow down the river of life streaming. Flow Morpheus slow, let the sun and light come streaming into my life. into my life. Sorry, I got a little into that one because that was my part. 'Cause I am fucking riffraff. Ding dong, asshole calling. Say hello, asshole. Hi. Brad Majors, asshole. This is my fiancée, Janet Weiss. Slut. Say hello, Riff. Hello. Say hello, God. Wonder if you could help us. See, our car broke down a few miles up the road. Do you have a telephone we could use? Castles don't have phones, asshole. Hey, Riff, look between Janet's legs. You're wet. Are you a slut, Janet? Yes. It's raining. Are you an asshole, Brad? Yes. Are you on drugs, Riff? Yes. I think perhaps you better both fuck off. Come inside. I don't care where you come as long as you clean it up. I don't care if you clean it up as long as you come. You're too kind. Are you having a party? No, it's my sister's bar mitzvah. You've arrived on a rather special night. It's one of the master's affairs. Lucky him. You're lucky, he's lucky, I'm lucky, we're all lucky. Hey, Magenta, show us how you get splinters in your pussy. And she slides down the wooden rail. Should I stop? I should stop. I should stop. Now I got the time warp in my head. Anyways, my wife gave me the 2 real cigarettes from the CRV. And thanks to Mr. Conway, I think she might be coming back with more. Those are so nasty. I just burped and tasted them again. Oh. They're like the Taco Bell of cigarettes. Like you could have Taco Bell for lunch and then have Italian food for dinner and chocolate cake for dessert and drink some wine and then you burp and it's fucking Taco Bell all over again. Just made it up past the pasta and ice cream, cake, whatever. Just that fucking beef just makes it through. It's like communism. It's like just can't be stopped. Oh, I'm missing a live hearing. Hello.
To me represents a seriousness that the body needs and
I do declare.
And a demeanor that I think we should all aspire to.
I think milk does a body good, and you should pass that on.
Holly, Blackburn, and Ernst, thank you for being part of this committee. To Senator Blackburn and Ernst, thank you for making history, I think, on our side. As to the hopes and dreams for this committee, to get as much done as possible and to fight when we have to over things that matter to the public and show two different views of an issue that's important, but do it as respectfully as possible. Sentencing reform, criminal justice reform was a very big deal. And this committee delivered for the country. Senator Durbin, I want to thank you very, very much for working with Senator Lee and Senator Grassley and Senator Booker. That's a big deal that's going to change lives, I think, in a positive way. So this committee has within it the ability to do big things long overdue. I know Senator Blackburn wants to do something on social media. Senator Klobuchar's got some ideas about how to make sure if you put an ad up on social media, you have to stand by it. We're all worried about social media platforms being hijacked by terrorists and bad actors throughout the international world. We're worried about privacy. Do you really know what you're signing up for when you get on one of these platforms? I'd like this committee working with Commerce to see if we can find some way to tame the Wild West. Intellectual property, Senator Tillis and Senator Coons have some ideas that I look forward to hearing about. Senator Sass wants to make sure that we act ethically. You got a package of ethic reforms, and I look forward to working with you there. On this side, I know there are a lot of ideas that I'm sure that if we sat down and talked, we could embrace, and I look forward to solving as many problems as we can and having a contest over ideas that really matter to the American people. Senator Hatch, thank you for coming. In terms of my chairmanship, if I can do what you and Senator Grassley were able to do during your time, I will have done the committee a good service. Senator Grassley, thank you very much. Last year was tough, but I think you and Senator Feinstein did the best you could in the environment in which we live. The times in which we live are very difficult times. I don't see them getting better overnight, but I do see them getting better if we all want them to. So about me, I want us to do better, and I'll be as measured as possible. The immigration Lindsay will show up, but the other guy's there too, and I don't like him any more than you do. So,
What the
bottom
fuck are
line
you?
is,
What the
we're
fuck?
starting off with something that would be good for the country. We have a vacancy for the Attorney General spot.
You mean the real
We
you as
have
opposed
a
to the you
chance
that's
to
paid
fill
by
that
Russia?
vacancy. Mr. Barr is.
South Carolina don't give a
You
fuck
can't
about
do a
immigration.
job. When you look at what he's done in his life, it's incredible.
Ain't no
I
damn
wanna
Mexicans
thank
in
the
South
president
Carolina.
for nominating somebody who is worthy of the job, who will understand on day one what the job is about, and can right the ship over there. I think we all have concerns. I know Senator Whitehouse is passionate about cybersecurity and Fort Cyber and all these other.
Like really, what do they got in fucking
that
South
Shelby's
Carolina?
been pushing. It's just a matter of time. before we
Illegal
get
yacht
far
deck
as
hands
as
migrating from
some
Bermuda? Like,
solutions. But a little bit about the nominee. He's been Attorney General before, from 91 to 93, by voice vote. Those were the days. Deputy Attorney General from 90 to 91, unanimous consent without a recorded vote. Assistant Attorney General, Office of Legal Counsel, voice vote. That's pretty amazing. I think you're going to have an actual vote this time. Academically gifted, George Washington Law School, Columbia University undergraduate. Outside of DOJ, he was the General Counsel, Legislative Counselor for the CIA. That's how he met Bush 41. He's been a law clerk.
and his southern accent is so fucking fake, by the way.
Committee with all the things he's done. He's been the Senior Vice President, General Counsel of GTE. He's lived a consequential life, General Counsel for Verizon. You lived a life that I think has been honorable and noteworthy and accomplished. And I want to thank you for being willing to take this task on. We got a lot of problems at the Department of Justice. I think morale is low and we need to change that. So I look forward to this hearing. You will be challenged. You should be challenged. The memo, there'll be a lot of talk about it, as there should be. But I just want to let you know, Mr. Barr, that we appreciate you stepping up at a time when the country needs somebody of your background and your temperament to be in charge of the rule of law. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Senator Funds.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman, and I want you to know I really look forward to working with you, and I think we can work productively together. And Senator Grassley, I want to thank you for the time we worked together. It really was a pleasure, and I had an opportunity to get to know you as the fine person that you are, so thank you very much. I want to say just one word or two or three about women. 25 years
Or 4
ago,
or
there
5.
were women on this
Perhaps
committee. I'll never
137.
forget, watching the Anita Hill hearing on a television in the London airport with a lot of people gathered around. So I went over to take a look, and I saw this all-male Judiciary Committee. And it took all these years, but here we are. And I want to particularly welcome Senator Ernst and Senator Blackburn. I think it's extraordinarily important that this committee be representative of our society at large, and we are growing that way, and so thank you very much for being here.
137 words exactly.
Welcome Bill Barr and his family. I know you're proud to be here, and you served as Attorney
I wasn't
General
counting.
before from
I
91
tried.
to
I gave up.
93, and I think we all have great respect for your commitment to public service. When we met, your previous tenure marked a very different, we talked about a very different time for our country. And today we find ourselves in a unique time with a different administration and different challenges. And now, perhaps more than ever before, the country needs someone who will uphold the rule of law, defend the independence of the Justice Department, and truly understand their job is to serve as the people's lawyer, not the president's lawyer. Top of mind for all of us is the ongoing Mueller investigation. Importantly, the Attorney General must be willing to resist political pressure and be committed to protecting this investigation. I'm pleased that in our private meeting, as well as in your written statement submitted to the committee, you stated that it's vitally important, and this is a quote, that the special counsel be allowed to complete his investigation, end quote. And that, quote, the public and Congress be informed of the results of the special counsel's work, end quote. However, there are at least two aspects of Mr. Mueller's investigation. First, Russian interference in the United States election, and whether any U.S. persons were involved in that interference. And second, possible obstruction of justice. It's the second component that you have written on. And just 5 months before you were nominated, I spent the weekend on your 19-page legal memo to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, criticizing Mueller's investigation, specifically the investigation into potential obstruction of justice. In the memo,
Treason.
you conclude, I think, that Special Counsel Mueller is, quote, grossly irresponsible for pursuing an obstruction case against the president. And pursuing the obstruction inquiry is fatally misconceived. So I hope we can straighten that out in this hearing. But your memo also shows a large sweeping view of presidential authority and a determined effort, I thought, to undermine Bob Mueller, even though you state you have been friends and are in the dark about many of the facts of the investigation. So it does raise questions about your willingness to reach conclusions before knowing the facts and whether you prejudge the Mueller investigation. And I hope you'll make that clear today. It also raises a number of serious questions about your views on executive authority and whether the president is in fact above the law. For example, you wrote, the president, and I quote, alone is the executive branch. As such, he is the sole repository of all executive powers conferred by the Constitution. Thus, the full measure of law enforcement authority is placed in the president's hands, and no limit is placed on the kinds of cases subject to his control and supervision. This is in your memo on page 10, and I will ask you about it. This analysis included cases involving potential misconduct, where you concluded, and I quote, "The president may exercise his supervisory authority over cases dealing with his own interests, and the president transgresses no legal limitation when he does so." That's on page 12. In fact, you went so far as to conclude that, quote, "The framers contemplates that the president's law enforcement powers extend to all matters, including those in which he has a personal stake." You also wrote the Constitution itself places no limit on the president's authority to act on matters which concern him or his own conduct, page 10. Later, you conceded that certain supervisory actions, such as the firing of Director Comey, may be unlawful obstruction. However, this too is qualified. You argue that in such a case, obstruction of justice occurs only if first a prosecutor proves that the president or his aides colluded with Russia. Specifically, you conclude, and I quote, "The issue of obstruction only becomes ripe after the alleged collusion by the president or his campaign is established first," end quote. So that's some of the things I hope to ask you about. And in conclusion, let me just say that some of your past statements on the role of Attorney General and presidential power are concerning. For instance, you've said in the past that the Attorney General is the president's lawyer. In November of 2017, you made comments suggesting it would be permissible for the president to direct the Justice Department to open an investigation into his political opponents. And this is notable in light of President Trump's repeated calls for the investigation of Hillary Clinton and others who disagree with him. I believe it's important that the next Attorney General be able to strongly resist pressure, whether from the administration or Congress, to conduct investigations for political purposes. He must have the integrity, the strength to tell the president no, regardless of the consequences. In short, he must be willing to defend the independence of the Justice Department. So my questions will be, do you have that strength and commitment to be independent of the White House pressures you will undoubtedly face? Will you protect the integrity of the Justice Department above all else? Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Feinstein. Senator Hatch, welcome back. We truly miss you. You were a great chairman and an incredible member of this body, and you're very welcome to share your thoughts about Mr. Barr with this committee.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Feinstein as well, and members of the committee. It is my distinct pleasure to be here today to introduce William Barr, the President's nominee to be Attorney General of the United States. I have known and worked with Bill closely over the years and glad to call him a friend. Bill has had a distinguished career in public service and in the private sector. He started his career at the Central Intelligence Agency. While there, he went to law school part-time at George Washington University. Following graduation, he was selected for a prestigious clerkship with the federal judge on the D.C. Circuit before heading to private practice. Later, he served in the Reagan White House in the Office of Policy Development. Following another stint in private practice, Bill began his distinguished career at the Department of Justice under President George H.W. Bush. Bill served as the Assistant Attorney General for the Office of Legal Counsel, then as Deputy Attorney General, and finally as Attorney General of the United States. As Attorney General, Bill oversaw a number of sensitive criminal investigations, including the investigation into the Pan Am Flight 103 bombing. He prioritized fighting violent crime and became known as the Law and Order Attorney General. Throughout his time at the Justice Department, Bill earned a reputation as a fierce advocate for the rule of law, as a principled and independent decision maker, and as a lawyer's lawyer. He has shown his commitment to the Constitution time and time again while serving our country. That is why he has been confirmed by the Senate unanimously 3 times. After completing his service at the DOJ, Bill returned to the private sector working at law firms and as counsel for some of America's largest companies. I could go on at length describing Bill's distinguished career. There is no question, none whatsoever, that Bill is well qualified to serve as Attorney General. He has held this position before and won high praise during his tenure for his fairness and his work ethic. So instead of droning on about Bill's resume, I want to tell you about what Bill identifies as the most important achievement of his private service as Attorney General. At least I believe this is what he believes. I believe his answer tells you much about how he will approach the job and who he is. When asked what his most important accomplishment was as Attorney General, Bill does not point to one of his many policy successes. He doesn't talk about his role in setting antitrust merger guidelines. He doesn't say it was his role leading the DOJ's response to the savings and loans crisis. No, for him, it was something more.
Both of those
Something
policies
more
were
tangible. It
ineffective
was Talladega.
in the worst way.
3 days after Bill was named acting Attorney General by President Bush, 121 prisoners noted and seized control of the Talladega Federal Correctional Institution in Alabama. This was a very serious matter, and they took 10 hostages. Planning at the DOJ.
I wonder
began
what story that
immediately
covered up.
best to resolve the situation and secure the safe release of the hostages. In such a situation, some would have sought political cover. Not Bill. He was in charge. He knew the response was his decision to make, his responsibility. He maintained his focus on the safety of the men and women held hostage by the prisoners. The standoff lasted 10 days. Then, on Bill's order, FBI agents stormed the prison. 3 minutes later, it was over. The hostages were safe. The mission was well planned and executed. The federal agents did not even have to fire a single shot. Bill's decision-making and judgment helped save lives. When President Bush nominated Bill to be Attorney General in 1991, I noted why he had been selected. He was not a member of President Bush's political or personal inner circle. He was not a part of the president's brain trust. He was not a politician or former politician who brought political clout to the position from prior elected office. Bill Barr was a lawyer's lawyer. Talent, merit, and performance. Those were the reasons President Bush selected him to be the Attorney General at that time. That statement holds true today. Bill Barr, in my opinion, is an outstanding choice for Attorney General. His vast experience, renowned judgment, and reputation as an ardent defender of the rule of law make him a nominee that the American people, the President, and the Senate should all be proud of. So I feel very honored to be here today to speak in his favor, and I hope that his nomination will be approved expeditiously. Thank you, Mr.
Thanks, Senator Hatch. I'd like to note at the outset that the rules of the Senate prohibit outbursts, clapping, or demonstrations of any kind. This includes blocking the view of people around you. Please be mindful of these rules. As we conduct this hearing, I'll ask the Capitol Police to remove anyone who violates the rules of this committee. Thanks, Senator Hatch. Ms. Barr, would you come forward, please? Raise your right hand, please. Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give to this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
The floor is yours.
Before I begin, Mr. Chairman, could I introduce my family?
Absolutely.
My wife of 46 years, Christine, a retired librarian. My daughter, Margaret, who we called Meg, she was an assistant United States attorney in the District of Columbia, but now has moved up to Capitol Hill and works for Senator Braun. My middle daughter, Patricia, who's also an attorney, and she has been counsel to the House Agriculture Committee for how long now? 11 years. And my daughter, Mary, who is a longtime federal prosecutor and is currently the coordinator for opioid enforcement in the Office of the Deputy Attorney General. Mary's husband, Mike, who is also an attorney at the Department of Justice in the National Security Division, and their son, Mary and Mike's son, Liam, who will someday be in the Department of Justice. Patricia's husband, Pelham, who is a founding partner of a consulting firm, and Meg's husband, Tyler, who is also an assistant United States attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. Did I leave anyone out?
Think about medical school, Liam. Somebody needs to make money in the family.
When Meg was starting at Notre Dame, I told her I wanted a doctor in the family, and I made her take organic chem. Needless to say, she's now a lawyer, so. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Feinstein, and members of the committee. It's a privilege to come before you today, and I'm honored that President Trump has nominated me for the position of Attorney General.
Oh, damn it. Sorry.
I regret that I come before this committee at a time when much of our government is shut down, and my thoughts are with the dedicated men and women of the Department of Federal Workers, many of whom continue to perform their critical jobs. As you know, if the Senate confirms me, this would be my second time.
You know, I was taking a shit,
of holding this office.
and I knew from way back
During
there,
the
as
4
soon as he
years I
said he
served
wanted to
under
introduce his family,
President George H.W. Bush, he nominated
as
me
my
for
wife,
his
and I knew the
successor
next
position.
thing would be daughter. The whole reason why he was even
27
doing
years
anything
ago at my confirmation hearing,
regarding that.
I
The whole
explained
reason
that
why
the
he
Office
was
of Attorney General
sitting there introducing his family. Just, everybody look at my daughter. I'm a reasonable man. You know, I've got a daughter. I'm not a Trumpist. You know, it was just a little very subtle thing, but I just like saw it coming a fucking mile away.
of justice, the enforcement of the law is above and away from politics. Nothing could be more destructive of our system of government, of the rule of law, or the Department of Justice as an institution, than any toleration of political interference with the enforcement of the law. I believe this as strongly today as I did 27 years ago, indeed more strongly. We live in a time when the country is deeply divided. In the current environment, the American people have to know that there are places in the government where the rule of law, not politics, holds sway, and where they will be treated fairly based solely on the facts and the even-handed application of the law. The Department of Justice must be that place. I did not pursue this position, and when my name was first raised, I was reluctant to be considered, and indeed proposed a number of alternative candidates. I'm 68 years old, partially retired and nearing the end of a long legal career. My wife and I were looking forward to a peaceful and cherished time with our daughters and grandchildren. And I've had this job before. But ultimately, I agreed to serve because I believe strongly in public service. I revere the law. I love the Department of Justice and the dedicated professionals who serve there. And I believe that I can do a good job leading the department in these times. If confirmed, I will serve with the same independence I did in 1991. At that time, when President Bush chose me, he sought no promises and asked only that his Attorney General act with professionalism and integrity. Likewise, President Trump has sought no assurances, promises, or commitments from me of any kind, either express or implied, and I have not given him any, other than that I would run the department with professionalism and integrity. As Attorney General, my allegiance will be to the rule of law, the Constitution, and the American people. This is how it should be, this is how it must be, and if you confirm me, this is how it will be. Now let me address a few matters I know are on the minds of some of the members of this committee. First, I believe it is vitally important that the special counsel be allowed to complete him. I have known Bob Mueller for 30 years. We worked closely together throughout my previous tenure at the Department of Justice. We've been friends since, and I have the utmost respect for Bob and his distinguished record of public service. And when he was named special counsel, I said his selection was good news, and that knowing him, I had confidence he would handle the matter properly, and I still have that confidence today. Given his public actions to date, I expect that the special counsel is well along in his investigation. At the same time, the president has been steadfast that he was not involved in any collusion with Russian attempts to interfere in the election. I believe it is in the best interest of everyone, the president, Congress, and the American people, that this matter be resolved by allowing the special counsel to complete his work. The country needs a credible resolution to these issues, and if confirmed, I will not permit partisan politics, personal interests, or any other improper consideration to interfere with this or any other investigation. I will follow the special counsel regulations scrupulously and in good faith, and on my watch, Bob will be allowed to finish his work. Second, I also believe it is very important that the public and Congress be informed of the results of the special counsel's work. My goal will be to provide as much transparency as I can consistent with the law. I can assure you that where judgments are to be made, I will make those judgments based solely on the law, and I will not let personal, political, or other improper interests influence my decision. Third, I would like to briefly address the memorandum that I wrote last June. I wrote the memo as a former Attorney General who has often weighed in on legal issues of public importance, and I distributed it broadly so that other lawyers would have the benefit of my views. My memo was narrow, explaining my thinking on a specific obstruction of justice theory under a single statute that I thought, based on media reports, the special counsel might be considering. The memo did not address, or in any other way question, the special counsel's core investigation into Russian efforts to interfere in the election, nor did it address other potential obstruction of justice theories or argue that some have wrongly suggested that a president can never obstruct justice. I wrote it myself on my own initiative without any assistance and based solely on public information. I would like to comment very briefly on my priorities if confirmed as Attorney General. First, we must continue the progress we've made on violent crime, while at the same time recognizing the changes that have occurred since I last served as Attorney General. The recently passed First Step Act, which I intend to diligently implement if confirmed, recognizes the progress we have made over the past 3 decades in fighting violent crime. As Attorney General, I will ensure that we will continue our efforts to combat violent crime. In the past, I was focused on predatory violence, but today I am also concerned about another kind of violence. We can only survive and thrive as a nation if we are mutually tolerant of each other's differences, whether they be differences based on race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or political thinking. And yet we see some people violently attacking others simply because of their differences. We must have zero tolerance for such crimes, and I will make this a priority as Attorney General if confirmed. Next, the department will continue to prioritize enforcing and improving our immigration laws. As a nation, we have the most liberal and expansive immigration laws in the world. Legal immigration has historically been a huge benefit to this country. However, as we open our front door and try to admit people in an orderly way, we cannot allow others to flout our legal system by crashing in through the back doors. In order to ensure that our immigration system works properly, we must secure our nation's borders, and we must ensure that our laws allow us to process, hold, and remove those who unlawfully enter. Finally, in a democracy like ours, the right to vote is paramount. In a period of great political division, one of the foundations of our nation is our enduring commitment to the peaceful transition of power through elections. If confirmed, I will ensure that the full might of our resources are brought to bear against foreign persons who unlawfully interfere in our elections. Fostering confidence in the outcome of elections also means ensuring that the right to vote is fully protected, as well as ensuring the integrity of elections. Let me conclude by making the point that over the long run, the course of justice in this country has more to do with the character of the Department of Justice as an enduring institution than with the tenure of any particular Attorney General. Above all else, if confirmed, I will work diligently to protect the professionalism and integrity of the department as an institution, and I will strive to leave it and the nation a stronger and better place. Very much for your time today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. We'll try to break around 11:30, I think, to get a quick bite and break up the day for you. But one thing I want to tell you is that I support the idea that politicians, no matter what party, should not interfere with criminal investigations. That makes eminent sense to me. Once you go down that road, then the rule of law collapses. But there's another side to this equation, if I may say a two-way street. What about those in charge of enforcing the law? What about those with the power to bring charges against American citizens, including people up here? I remember Senator Stevens' case in Alaska. So we should always be on guard about the politician interfering in an investigation, but we should also have oversight of how the department works and those with this tremendous power use that power. Are you familiar with the January 11th New York Times article about FBI open inquiry into whether Trump was secretly working on behalf of Russians?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Would you promise me and this committee to look into this and tell us whether or not, in the appropriate way, a counterintelligence investigation was opened up by somebody at the FBI/Department of Justice against President Trump?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think there are a number of investigations.
Will you go after the investigators? Really?
Have you ever heard of such a thing in all the time you've been associated with the Department of Justice?
I have never heard of that.
Never heard of
Are there
fuckheads
rules
like you
about
supporting a
how you do
traitor.
counterintelligence investigations?
I believe there are, Mr. Chairman.
So if you want to open up one against the president, are there any checks and balances?
Not outside the FBI.
Okay. Well, we need to look at that. In terms of people who are actually
Bullshit.
enforcing the law, don't we want to make sure they don't have an agenda?
Well, we know you sure as
That's
hell
right,
do.
Mr. Chairman.
Do you know a Lisa Page or Peter Strzok?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I've heard their names.
So do you know them personally?
No, I don't.
This is a message August 8th, 2016, a text message. Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right. Strzok responded, no, he's not. We'll stop it. Strzok was in charge of the Clinton email investigation. Ms. Page worked at the Department of Justice. August 15th.
And they
2016.
never
I want to
revealed
believe
anything.
Kathy threw out for consideration in Andy's office that there's no way he gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before 40. March 4th, 2016.
Yeah, our country was being taken over by a fucking foreign traitor. People at the FBI had a problem with that. You're playing it as political because you are also a fucking traitor.
Provide a coherent answer. To all those who enforce the law, you can have any opinion of us that you like,
Traitor.
but you're supposed to do your job without an agenda. Do you promise me as Attorney General, if you get this job, to look in to see what happened in 2016?
The only agenda is
How do
patriotic.
these statements sit with you?
The only agenda
I was
is
shocked when I
loyalty.
saw them.
Okay, please get to the bottom of it. I promise you we will protect the investigation, but we're relying upon you to clean this place up. FISA warrant. Are you familiar with a FISA warrant?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. During the process of obtaining a warrant, is there a
You
certification
done giving
made
lip
by the
service to your
Department of
fucking
Justice
brown
to
nose
the
and
court
bullshit,
that the
Lindsay.
information being provided is reliable?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with Bruce Orr?
Oh,
No,
Jesus.
I'm not.
Bruce Orr was Associate Deputy Attorney General for Organized Crime and
Uh-huh.
Drug Enforcement.
Uh-huh.
His wife worked at Fusion GPS.
Oh,
Are
for
you
fuck's sake.
familiar with Fusion GPS?
Yes, I've read about that.
Fusion GPS, Mr. Barr, was hired by the Democratic National Committee and
After
the
being
Clinton
hired by the
campaign
Republicans.
to do opposition research against candidate Trump and maybe other candidates. But we now know that they hired Fusion GPS Michael Steele, who was a former British agent,
Was
to do
working for
opposition
them
research
while they
to
were hired by
produce
the
famous
Republicans.
Dossier. Were you aware that Mr. Orr's wife worked for that organization?
I've read that.
Does that bother you if he had anything to do with the case?
Yes.
Are you aware that on numerous occasions he met with Mr. Steele while his wife worked with Fusion GPS?
I've read that.
Okay. The warrant certification against Carter Page on 4 different occasions certifies that the dossier, which was the main source of the warrant, was reliable. Would you look in to see whether or not that was an accurate statement and hold people accountable if it was not?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mueller. You say you've known Mueller a long time. Would you say you have a close relationship with Mr. Mueller?
I would say we were good friends.
Would you say
It's like talking points memo
that
for
you
fucking
understand him to
traitors
be
who
a
are still
fair-minded
proud of it.
person?
Absolutely.
Do you trust him to be fair to the president and the country as a whole?
The dossier
Yes.
doesn't have shit to
When
do
his
with
report
shit,
comes
first
to
of
you,
all.
will you share it with us as much as
No
possible?
part of the investigation
Consistent
depends
with
on
the
the dossier.
regulations and the law,
No part of the
yes.
Do you
investigation was
believe
started
Mr.
by
Mueller
the
would be
dossier.
involved in a witch hunt against anybody?
It's their
I don't-
side
I
story.
don't believe Mr. Mueller would be involved in a witch hunt.
What are the circumstances that would allow a special counsel to be appointed, generally speaking?
Well, I appointed 3, Mr. Chairman, a special counsel, and generally, when something comes up, an issue comes up that needs to be investigated, and there are good reasons to have it investigated.
And you're worried about
by a
political
special
hacks like
counsel
you,
outside
Mr.
the normal
Graham,
chain of the
interfering.
department, someone usually of public stature that can provide additional assurance of
Do you
nonpartisan.
believe that Attorney General Sessions had a conflict because he worked on the Trump campaign?
Obviously.
I'm not sure of all the facts. But I think he probably did the right thing recusing himself.
I agree. I think he did the right thing to recuse himself. Do you know Rod Rosenstein?
Yes, I do.
What's your opinion of him?
I have a very high opinion of
I
Rod
like this guy.
Rosenstein and his service in the department.
Why did you write the memo?
I wrote the memo because starting, I think, in June of 2017, there were many news reports, and I had no facts, and none of us really outside the department have facts. But I read a lot of news reports suggesting that there were a number of potential obstruction theories that were being contemplated, or at least explored.
This
One
guy's so
theory in
good, he might have
particular,
spoke Russian just to get Trump's
that
trust.
appeared to be under consideration under a specific
I like this guy.
statute concerned me because I thought it
He's
would
all right
involve
for a white
stretching
guy.
the statute beyond what was intended, and would do it in a way that would have serious adverse consequences for all agencies that are involved in the administration of justice, especially the Department of Justice. And I thought it would have a chilling effect going forward over time. And my memo is very clear, that is the concern that was driving me. The impact, not the particular case, but its impact of a rule over time. And I wanted to make sure that before anyone went down this path, if that was in fact being considered,
He's got a pretty high
that
IQ.
the full implications of the theory were carefully thought out. So I wanted my views to get in front of the people who would be involved in, and the various lawyers who would be involved in those discussions. So I first raised these concerns verbally with Rod Rosenstein
Methodist?
when I had lunch with him early in 2008, and he did not respond and was sphinx-like in his reaction, but I expounded on my concerns. And then I later attempted to provide a written analysis as follow-up. Now, I initially thought of an op-ed, and because of the material, it wasn't working out, and I talked to his staff and I said, I want to follow up and send something to Rod in writing, but is he a one-pager kind of guy, or how much will he read? And the guy said he's like you. He doesn't mind wading into a dense.
Don't you
legal
think
matter.
President Trump is a one-pager kind of guy?
Excuse me?
President
Really?
Trump is a one-pager kind of guy.
I suspect he is.
Okay, just remember that. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Really?
And so I provided the memo to Rod, and I provided it, distributed it freely among the other lawyers that I thought would be interested in it. And I think it was entirely proper. It's very common for me and for other former senior officials to weigh in on matters that they think may be ill-advised and may have ramifications down the road. For example, just a few months before that, I had weighed in repeatedly to complain about.
All right, gonna have to put the camera on hold for a second there.
Menendez. I think I made 3 calls. I think it was 2 to Sessions, to AG Sessions, and 1 to
You're back?
Rosenstein. Now, I didn't know Senator Menendez.
We're watching the hearing.
I don't represent Senator Menendez. No one was paying me to do it. And in fact, I don't support Senator Menendez politically. But I carefully watched this case. My friend Abby Lowell was his defense counsel, and it was very much like a line of cases that I had been concerned about when I was AG, and so I was watching it, and I thought the prosecution was based on a fallacious theory that would have bad long-term consequences. And so I freely weighed in at the department. And I did so because I care about the rule of law. And I want to say one final thing on the rule of law because it picks up on something you said, Mr. Chairman. What is the rule of law? We all use that term. In the area of enforcement, I think the rule of law is that you apply a rule to A. It has to be the same rule and approach you apply to B, C, D, and E, and so forth. And that seems to me to suggest 2 corollaries for an attorney general. The first, that's why we don't like political interference. Political interference means that the rule being applied to A isn't the rule you're applying to A. It's special treatment because someone's in there exerting political influence. The corollary to that, and this is what you're driving at, Mr. Chairman, is that when you apply...
This guy is smarter than everyone else in that fucking room.
A, you got to be careful that it's not torqued, especially for that case, in a way that couldn't be applied.
He's
down the
teaching
road,
children
or
right
if it
now,
is applied, will create problems down the road.
while speaking
And I
over
think
their
the
heads
Attorney
purposely
General's
at the
job
same time.
is both. It is both to protect against interference, but it's also to provide oversight to make sure that in each individual case, the same rule that would be applied broadly is being applied to the individual.
As in, no one's above the law,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
but he's not saying that.
6 quick yes or
He's
no
also telling them
questions.
what they want to hear.
Will you commit to no interference
Very good.
with the scope
Very
of the special counsel's
This
investigation?
guy's good.
I will, the scope of the special counsel's investigation
By not
is
limiting.
set by his charter and by the regulations, and I will ensure that those are maintained.
Will you commit to providing Mr. Mueller with the resources, funds, and time needed to complete his investigation?
Yes.
Will you commit to ensuring the
Yes,
special
just
counsel Mueller
yes.
is not terminated
I like
without
this
good
guy.
cause consistent with department
Oh,
regulations?
he answered a
Absolutely.
question.
If special counsel Mueller makes any
Just
request,
answer.
for instance, about the scope of his investigation or resources for his investigation, will you commit to notifying Congress if you deny that request?
I think the regulations require notification of Congress if there's a disagreement.
Thank you. And I have two questions from the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Will you commit to making any report Mueller produces at the conclusion of his investigation available to Congress and to the public?
As I said in my statement, I am going to make as much information available as I can, consistent with the rules and regulations that are part of the special counsel regulations.
Will you commit to making any report on the obstruction of justice public?
That's the same answer.
Thank you. In your June 2018 memo about obstruction of justice to the Mueller investigation, you repeatedly referred to Mueller's, quote, sweeping and all-encompassing interpretation of Section 1512, which is a statute on obstruction. How do you know what Mueller's interpretation of 1512 is?
Well, as I said, I was speculating. I freely said at the beginning, I was writing in the dark, and we're all in the dark. Every lawyer, every talking head, everyone who thinks about or talks about it doesn't have the facts.
So I spent my Saturday reading that memorandum.
Yeah.
So are you saying this is all your speculation? It's a big memo.
Well, it was informed to the extent that I thought that was one of the theories being considered. And I don't know how seriously, whether it was being considered or how seriously it was being considered. But as a shorthand way in the memo of referring to what I was speculating might be the theory, I referred to it as Mueller's theory, rather than go in every time I mention it, say, well, this is
Do
speculative.
you know what Mueller's interpretation of 1512 is?
No, I don't know what Mueller's interpretation. But, and just one point, Senator, I think, you said in your opening statement, I said he was grossly irresponsible. I think I said if something happens, it would be grossly irresponsible. I was not calling Mueller grossly irresponsible.
I understand. Thank you. I appreciate that. Has anyone given you non-public information about Mueller's investigation?
I don't recall getting any confidential information about the investigation.
Your 2018 in it, you stated, and I quote, "The framers' plan contemplates that the president's law enforcement powers extend to all matters, including those in which he had a personal stake."
Oh, wasn't that
End
spooky?
quote. Please explain what you base this conclusion on.
Ding, 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 we
Yes.
have a winner.
Here's the Department of Justice right here. And within the Department of Justice,
He
enforcement
just slammed his
decisions are
pen
being
down
made.
at the same time I slammed my letter
The
down.
president's over here. And I think of it as there are two categories of potential communications. One would be on a case that the president wants to communicate about that he has no personal interest in, no political interest in. Let's say the president's concerned about Chinese stealing trade secrets and say, I want you to go after this company that's being, that may be stealing trade secrets. That's perfectly appropriate for him to do, to communicate that. But whether it's bona fide or not, the Department of Justice's obligation and the Attorney General's obligation is not to take any action unless we, the Department of Justice and the Attorney General, reach their own independent conclusion that it is justified under the law, and regardless of the instruction. And that's my quote that everyone is saying, I'm sicking the, it's okay for the president to direct things. All I said was, it's not per se improper for the president to call on the department for doing something, especially if he has no personal or political interest in it. The other category of cases, and let's pick an easy bad example, would be if a member of the president's family or a business associate or something was under investigation and he tries to intervene. He's the chief law enforcement officer, and you could say, well, he has the power, but that would be a breach of his obligation under the Constitution to faithfully execute the laws. So, in my opinion, if a president attempts to intervene in a matter that he has a stake in to protect himself, that should first be looked at as a breach of his constitutional duties. Whether it also violates a statute, depending on what statute comes into play and what all the facts are.
Including the emollients clause of the Constitution.
I think there's a dispute as to what the emoluments clause relates to. I have not personally researched the emoluments clause. I can't even tell you what it says at this point. Off the top of my head, I would have said, well, emoluments are essentially a stipend attached to some office, but I don't know if that's correct or not. But I'm sure I think it's being litigated right now.
I don't know either, so I'm going to try and find out. We'll come back another day and maybe discuss it. Your memo stated a fatal flaw in Mueller's interpretation of 1512C2 is that while defining obstruction solely as acting corruptly, Mueller offers no definition of what corruptly means. My understanding is that there's nothing in the public record that sheds light on his definition of obstruction. Do you know what his definition is?
I don't know what his definition is. I read a book where people were asking whether someone was, I don't know if it's accurate, but whether the president was acting with corrupt intent. And what I say in my memo is actually people don't understand what the word corruptly means in that statute. It's an adverb, and it's not meant to mean with the state of mind. It's actually meant the way in which the influence or obstruction is committed. That's its adverbial function in the statute, and what it means is, using it in the 19th century sense, it meant to influence it in a way that changes something that's good and fit to something that's bad and unfit, namely the corruption of evidence or the corruption of a decision maker. That's what the word corruptly means, because once you dissociate it from that, it really means very hard to discern what it means. It means bad. What does bad mean?
Let me go on because my time is so limited.
Needs a spanking?
You argue that and I quote, the Constitution's plenary grant of those powers to the president also extends to the unitary character of the executive branch itself. Specifically, you argue, and this is a quote, while Mueller's immediate target is the president's exercise of his discretionary powers, his obstruction theory reaches all exercises of prosecutorial discretion by the president's subordinates, from the attorney general down to the most junior line prosecutor, end quote. So if the president orders the attorney general to halt a criminal investigation for personal reasons, would that be prohibited under your theory?
Prohibited by what?
By
The Constitution.
the Constitution?
I think it would be a breach of the president's duties to faithfully execute the law. It would be an abuse of power. Whether it would violate a statute depends on all the facts and what statute someone would cite me to. But I certainly think it would be an abuse of his power. And let me just say that the position...
Would that be the same thing if an attorney general fired U.S. attorneys for political reasons?
No, because U.S. attorneys are political appointments.
According to news reports, President Trump interviewed you and asked you to be part of the legal team defending him in the Mueller investigation twice. First in the spring of 17, when the investigation was just beginning, and again earlier this year. Is that correct?
No. I had one conversation with him that related to his private representation. I can describe that for you. That was in June of 2017. That's the only time I met him before I talked to him about the job of.
Gratulzowie. Bo gusto de nenas. Is this algae scraper a time warping device? This is how we send the starfish flying. All right, coralline algae grow on the back glass, not the front glass. Good video. Glass on the front side, yeah, that's the grip side. Oh, that's not the anemone. Oh shit. Where the fuck is the anemone?
Thank you all. You're not going to get a good shot at me, so thank you all. So Happy New Year, new Congress, and we'll see how this goes. Recognize Senator Grassley.
Okay. I do this with a point of personal privilege, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate that courtesy of you and the members. This is the first meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee in this 116th Congress. It's also the first time that we convene while my friend Lindsey Graham holds the gavel and will proceed to be chairman. So I'd like to congratulate the new chairman, thank him for his leadership, and say that I look forward to working with you and other members of this committee as we seek to address some of our nation's most pressing problems. I have every confidence that you'll steer our 200-year-old committee in the right direction.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. In my view, nobody looks over 100, so we're actually we're aging well as a committee. The bottom line is, how do you get this job? Your colleagues have to vote for you. Thank you. You have to get reelected and outlive the person to your right. So I've been able to do that, and I look forward to working with Senator Feinstein, who is, I have a lot of affection and fondness for. She, to me, represents a seriousness that the body needs, and a demeanor that I think we should all aspire to. To the new colleagues, Senator Hawley, Blackburn, and Ernst, thank you for being part of this committee. To Senator Blackburn and Ernst, thank you for making history, I think, on our side. As to the hopes and dreams for this
Not
committee,
being actual women willing to call
to
themselves
get as much
Republicans.
done as possible and to fight when we have to over things that matter to the public and show two different views of an issue that's important, but do it as respectfully as possible. Sentencing reform, criminal justice reform was a very big deal. And this committee delivered for the country. Senator Durbin, I want to thank you very, very much for working with Senator Lee and Senator Grassley and Senator Booker. That's a big deal that's going to change lives, I think, in a positive way. So this committee has within it the ability to do big things long overdue. I know Senator Blackburn wants to do something on social media. Senator Klobuchar's got some ideas about how to make sure if you put an ad up on social media, you have to stand by it. We're all worried about the social media platforms being hijacked by terrorists and bad actors throughout the international world. We're worried about privacy. Do you really know what you're signing up for when you get on one of these platforms? I'd like this committee working with Commerce to see if we can find some way to tame the Wild West. Intellectual property, Senator Tillis and Senator Coons have some ideas that I look forward to hearing about. Senator Sass wants to make sure that we act ethically. You got a package of ethic reforms, and I look forward to working with you there. On this side, I know there are a lot of ideas that I'm sure that if we sat down and talked, we could embrace, and I look forward to solving as many problems as we can and having a contest over ideas that really matter to the American people. Senator Hatch, thank you for coming. In terms of my chairmanship, if I can do what you and Senator Grassley were able to do during your time, I will have done the committee a good service. Senator Grassley, thank you very much. Last year was tough, but I think you and Senator Feinstein did the best you could in the environment in which we live. The times in which we live are very difficult times. I don't see them getting better overnight, but I do see them getting better if we all want them to. So about me, I want us to do better, and I'll be as measured as possible. The immigration Lindsay will show up.
What the hell?
But the other guy's there too. And I don't like him any more than you do. So, the bottom line is,
This has started over.
we're starting off with something that would be good for the country. We have a vacancy for the Attorney General spot. We have a chance to fill that vacancy. Mr. Barr is, you can't hold a job. Look at what he's done
Hold
in his
on.
life. It's incredible. So I want to thank the president for nominating somebody who is worthy of the job, who will understand on day one what the job is about, and can right the ship over there. I think we all have concerns. I know Senator Whitehouse is passionate about cybersecurity, and
respond to congressional inquiries and to do it
What
in
the
a
fuck?
timely manner.
Absolutely, Senator.
See that shit? They just cut it off and started it over again, and it's still going.
Applies regardless of whether you're a member of Congress or a committee chairman.
Yes, Senator. You and Senator Leahy,
I'm
I
old
think, are
and
the only members of the
I do
committee
nothing
now.
wrong
Here
'cause I'm an old
27 years
person, and
ago
old
when I was
people are
first confirmed,
innocent.
But I think you will recall that we were able to establish very cooperative, productive relationships with all the members and try to respond to their questions and deal with their concerns and work with them on projects they're interested in. And that will be the same approach that I will bring to the job if you confirm me.
Okay, then let me be specific on my last question on oversight. You remember when you were in my office, I gave you, as I gave Attorney General Sessions, as I gave the Holder, a long list of things that the department has not answered. And one of these was an October 17th, 2018 letter. And I'd like to have your response to answering that letter and respond to all outstanding and future oversight requests in a timely manner. And then remember, I said, all you cabinet people come up here to tell us yes when we ask you if you're going to answer our stuff. I said, maybe you better say maybe. So if you want to say maybe now and be really honest, say maybe.
Call me
Otherwise,
maybe.
I hope you'll answer that October 17th letter once we get you voted into office.
Yes, Senator.
Throughout your career, you've expressed concern with congressional attempts to enact criminal justice reform and at times advocated for stricter mandatory minimum sentences. In '92, under your direction, DOJ published a report entitled The Case for More Incarceration. This report declared that the problem with our criminal justice system was that we were incarcerating too few criminals. More recently, in 2015, you signed a letter opposing the Sentencing Reform and Corrections Act of 2015. This letter states quite clearly your opposition to sentencing reform, particularly the lessening of mandatory minimum sentences, any sort of retroactivity. The First Step Act was
He doesn't
signed
even know what he's
by
reading.
President Trump. As Attorney General, it'll be your job to implement the legislation. Even though you've opposed criminal justice reform in the past, will you commit to fully implementing the First Step Act?
Yes, Senator. But you know, in 1992, when I was Attorney General, the violent crime rates were the highest in American history. The sentences were extremely short. Typically,
I can vouch for that. I lived in the
many
ghetto.
states, the time served for rape was 3 years. For murder, time served 5 to 7 years. It was the system had broken down, and I think through a series of administrations, Reagan, Bush, and Clinton, the laws were changed, and we targeted chronic violent offenders, especially
You mean
those
like
using guns.
super predators?
And I think the reason the crime rate is much lower today is because of those policies. So I don't think comparing the policies that were in effect in 1992 to the situation now is really fair. And I think, and I've said that right now
Acid
we have
wash
greater
genes are
regularity
no longer in
in
style.
sentencing. There's broader recognition that chronic violent offenders should be incarcerated for significant periods of time to get them off the streets. And I think the time was right to take stock and make changes to our penal system based on current experience. So I have no problem
He said,
with the approach of reforming the sentencing structure. And
said
I will
penal.
faithfully enforce that law.
Don't take it personal if I raise my voice to you. I'm not mad at you.
If I were you, I'd answer his
I
letter.
just like to hear myself speak, but I'm going
A
deaf.
tip that may help you through your job if you get it. I'll take the time away from my second round. I'm very curious about the conversations you had about personal representation being Attorney General. You mentioned it, Senator Feinstein. Can you kind of give us a summary of what you were talking about?
Yeah, so in June of 2017, middle of June, Ambassador David Friedman, who's the U.S. ambassador to Israel, who I didn't know. I knew that he was a top-tier lawyer in New York and apparently a friend of the president's. He reached out to me and we talked one evening, and he said that my understanding was he was interested in finding lawyers that could augment the defense team, and failing that, he wanted to identify Washington lawyers who had broad experience that whose perspective might be useful to the president's. And he asked me a number of questions like, what have you said about the president publicly? Do you have any conflicts and so forth? And I told him that I didn't think I could take this on, that I had just taken on a big corporate client that was very important to me and I expected a lot of work. And I said at my point in life, I really didn't want to take on this burden, and that I actually preferred the freedom to not have any representation of an individual, but just say what I thought about anything without having to worry about that. And I said that my wife and I were sort of looking forward to a bit of respite, and I didn't want to stick my head into that meat grinder. He asked me if I would nonetheless just briefly go over the next day to meet with the president. And I said, sure, I'll go and meet with the president. And he brought me over and was squeezing me in. It looked to me like it was before the morning staff meeting because people were grouping by the door to get in, and I went in. And he was there, the ambassador was there, sat through the meeting. It was a very brief meeting where essentially the president wanted to know, you know, he said, oh, you know Bob Mueller. How well do you know Bob Mueller? And I told him how well I knew Bob Mueller and how, you know, the Barrs and Muellers were good friends and would be good friends when this is all over and so forth. And he was interested in that, wanted to know, you know, what I thought about, you know, Mueller's integrity and so forth and so on. And I said, Bob is a straight shooter and should be dealt with as such. And he said something to the effect like, so are you envisioning some role here? And I said, you know, actually, Mr. President, right now I couldn't do it. You know, my personal and my professional obligations are such that I'm unable to do it. So he asked me for my phone number. I gave it to him, and I never heard from him again until.
Well, I tried that one. You did better than
Well, I didn't hear from him until, you know, later, but about something different, which was the Attorney General position.
Well, thank you, Mr. Barr. Good to see you again. As you mentioned, Senator Grassley and I were here at your hearing a number of years ago. Let me go back even before that. 46 years ago, I was not in the Senate. I was state's attorney in Vermont, and I watched with a great deal of interest the Elliot Richardson hearings. He'd been nominated to be Attorney General as the midst of Watergate. He made several commitments to the committee, including appointing a special prosecutor. And he promised to protect his independence. And as one who had total independence as elected prosecutor in Vermont, I thought how important it was to have the same independence at the national level. And Mr. Richardson said it was necessary to create the maximum possible degree of public confidence in the integrity of the process. I've never forgotten that. I think the integrity of our institutions is just as much at risk today. President Trump has made it clear he views the Justice Department as an extension of his political power. He's called on it to target his opponents. He obsesses over the Russian investigation, which looms over his presidency, may define it. He attacks the special counsel almost daily. He fired both the previous FBI director and attorney general for not handling the investigation as he pleased. That tells me the rule of law can no longer be taken for granted. So if confirmed, the president's going to expect you to do his bidding. I can almost guarantee you, he'll cross the line at some point.
Huh.
That's why the commitments you make here today, just like those I watched Elliot Richardson make years ago, matter greatly. So will you commit, if confirmed, to both seeking and following the advice of the department's career ethics officials on whether you must recuse from the special counsel's investigation?
I will seek the advice of the career ethics personnel, but under the regulations, I make the decision as the head of the agency as to my own recusal. So I certainly would consult with them, and at the end of the day, I would make a decision in good faith based on the laws and the facts that are evident at that time.
Same thing if you're talking about a conflict of interest?
Well, no, some conflicts, as you know, are mandatory.
I'm thinking what Attorney General Sessions, and when asked a similar question, he said he'll seek and follow the advice. Seek and follow the advice of the Department of Justice's designated ethics officials. So let me ask you, maybe in a different way. I know you promised to not interfere with the special counsel. Are there any circumstances that would cause you to terminate the investigation or any component of it, or significantly restrict its funding?
Under the regulations, Bob Mueller could only be terminated for good cause, and frankly, it's unimaginable to me that Bob would ever do anything that gave rise to good cause. But in theory, if something happened that was good cause, for me, it would actually take more than that. It'd have to be pretty grave, and the public interest would essentially have to compel it, because I believe right now the overarching public interest is to allow him to finish.
I would agree with that, but I also think over the past 18 months, you rather harshly prejudged your investigation in some of your writings.
Well, I
Fucking moron.
I don't see that at all,
fucking
Senator. You know, when you strip
stupid
away
fish.
a lot of the rhetoric, the two things that have been thrown up as me sort of being antagonistic to the investigation are
Fucking
two
trying to medicate
things.
you, idiot.
One, a very mild comment I made that, gee, I wish the team had been more balanced. I wasn't criticizing Mueller. I believe that prosecutors, and I think you would agree, they can handle the case professionally, whatever their politics are. They you know, a good prosecutor can leave their politics at the door and go in and do the job. And I think that's what Justice Department prosecutors do in general.
But you also are very critical
But
of the Russian probe, and I mean, I can't think of anything that would, in your memo, for example, that would jump out more for this president because of his commitment to it. And I ask that because some have said, on both sides, that it looked like a job application. And so that's what I want you to refer to.
well, you know, that's ludicrous. If I wanted the job and was going after the job, there are many more direct ways of me bringing myself to the president's attention than writing an 18-page legal memorandum,
Or
sending it to the
criticize-
Department of Justice and routing it to other
But also publicly criticizing Russian probe. I mean,
How have I criticized the Russian probe?
you don't have any criticism of the Russian probe?
Not at all. I believe the Russians interfered or attempted to interfere with the election, and I think we have to get to the bottom of it.
So you would be in favor of releasing the investigative report when it's completed?
As I've said, I'm in favor of as much transparency as there can be, consistent with the rules
Well, that's gone
and the law.
You see a case where the president could claim executive privilege and say that parts of the report could not be released?
Well, I don't have a clue as to what would be in the report. The report could end up being, you know, not very big. I don't know what's going to be in the report. In theory, if there was executive privilege material to which an executive privilege claim could be made, it might, someone might raise a claim of executive
That'd
privilege.
be pretty difficult following the U.S. versus Nixon when the Supreme Court unanimously rejected President Nixon's claims of executive privilege over the Watergate tapes. But I ask him because the president's attorney, Mr. Giuliani, said the president should be able to correct the Mueller report before any public release. So in other words, he could take this investigative report, put his own spin on it, and correct it before it's released. You commit that would not happen if you were Attorney General?
That will not happen.
Thank you. You had, when you're AG, I remember this well because I was here in the Senate at the time, you encouraged President George H.W. Bush to pardon all 6 individuals who were targeted in Iran-Contra. The independent prosecutor
And there we go.
investigating the matter labeled that a cover-up. Now, you and I talked about this in my office, and I appreciate you coming by. I found the conversation the two of us had be well worthwhile. Do you believe a president could lawfully issue a pardon in exchange for the recipient's promise to not incriminate him?
No, that would be a crime.
Thank you. In 1990, You argue that Congress appropriation power is not an independent source of congressional power to control the allocation of government resources. Only 3 committees in the Senate have a vice chairman. Appropriations is one of them. Obviously, as vice chairman, I kind of looked at that. You claim that a president
Stress
finds no
guard
appropriated funds
will make
within
your
a given
protein
category.
skimmer go fucking
He may
crazy.
use funds from another category, as long as both categories are in his constitutional purview. Now, it says Vice Chairman Appropriations Committee. Don't be surprised, I disagree. Congress's power of the purse, Article 1, Section 9. I believe the Constitution is one of the most fundamental and foundational checks and balances on the executive branch. So do you believe the president can ignore Congress appropriations allocations, conditions, and restrictions in law? Just ignore them and take the money? And
Not as a general proposition, but I did, that was a
general problem.
I actually thought that was a good law review article. I gave it as a speech, and it was really a thought piece, and what I was really saying was, and I say right up front, that the more I thought about the appropriations power, the more confused I got, and I was just laying out a potential template, which is this. People frequently say, you know, the power to, you know, spend money on this division or this missile system is part of the power of the purse, and what I was actually saying was, you know, actually, what the power being exercised there is the substantive power that Congress has to raise armies, and it's not. It doesn't come
We also
from
have
the power of.
specific appropriations on agriculture or on finance. I mean, for example, could a president just build a wall along our southern border because he wanted to and just take the money, whether appropriate or
He
not?
said, damn it, don't
Like
ask
on
me
the
that.
eminent domain.
What about eminent domain?
Well, if you're going to build a wall, you're going to take a whole lot of land away from landowners
No.
in Texas and elsewhere.
Well, you know, you'd have to show me what statute is being invoked and also what appropriations is being used. I can't answer that in the abstract.
So you're saying the president will have the power to go into money.
Don't fuck up his game with Trump, man. Don't fuck up his game with Trump.
Appropriate for a different purpose?
I didn't say that. But some
You mean that?
I don't mean that. I'm saying that you know, there are monies that the president may have power to shift because of statutory authority.
But that would have been because Congress gave him that authority.
Right.
Not because he has it automatically.
I'm not taking that position. As I said, my law review, it was published as a law review article, and it was a thought piece exploring what limits there might be to the appropriations power and where Congress's power comes from in certain areas.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just to follow up on that real quick, and I won't take this against their corn. Did the Article 2 powers, the inherent authority of the Commander-in-Chief, give him the ability to take appropriated dollars for the Department of Defense and build a wall?
I can't, without looking at the statute, I really couldn't answer
I'm
that.
not talking about a statute, I'm talking about the inherent authority of the President as Commander-in-Chief.
That's the kind of question I would go to OLC to
Okay.
answer.
Get back with us on that, Senator Corn.
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me congratulate you on your election as chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and tell you we look forward to working with you and supporting this committee's efforts. Thank you for convening today's hearing. And I want to express my profound and sincere thanks to the nominee, Mr. Barr, for agreeing to serve a second time as Attorney General. I noted in your statement, you said it was 27 years ago that you sat in this chair and went through your first confirmation hearing. And to me, that says a lot about your character and your commitment to the rule of law, that you would be willing to go through this process again and serve once again as the chief law enforcement officer of the country. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you to your family as well. To me, the Attorney General is one of the most challenging cabinet offices to hold because, as you point out in your opening statement, you are committed to the rule of law and enforcing the laws of the land, but you are also a political appointee of a president. If you are serving another cabinet position, certainly you're committed to implementing the president's agenda or the agenda of an administration, but as Attorney General, that is not an unequivocal commitment, because there may be some things that the administration wants you to do that you cannot do consistent with the rule of law, correct?
That's right, Senator. One of the reasons I ultimately decided that I would accept this position if it was offered to me was because I feel that I'm in a position to be independent. You know, over the years, a lot of people have, some politicians have called me up saying, you know, I'm thinking of going for the Attorney General position in this administration and so forth. And I say, you're crazy. Because if you view yourself as having a political future down the road, don't take the job. Because if you take this job, you have to be ready, you know, to make decisions and spend all your political capital and have no future.
Kind of like
You
the
have to have
thing I
that
was
freedom of
talking about
action.
with Giuliani last night. Yeah.
And I feel I'm in a position in life where I can do the right thing and not really care about the consequences, in the sense that I can truly be independent.
Mr. Barr, thinking
Good
back
save,
about
good
the
save.
run-up to the 2016 election, where the nominee of both political parties for President of the United States ended up being investigated by the FBI, can you think of any precedent in American history where that's occurred that you know of?
No, I can't, Senator.
And thinking back to James Comey's press conference of July the 7th, 2016, where he took the step of talking about the evidence against Mrs. Clinton, talking about the legal standard that would apply as to whether she might or might not be indicted for committing a crime under the Espionage Act. Have you ever seen a situation where an FBI director would usurp the authority of the Department of Justice to make that charging decision and hold a press conference and talk about all of the derogatory information that the investigation had gleaned against a potential defendant, and then say, now we're not going to, no reasonable prosecutor would indict her? Have you ever seen anything like that happen before?
No, I've never seen that, and I thought it was a little bit, more than a little bit, it was weird at the time, but my initial reaction to it was, I think Attorney General Lynch had said something, you know, she was under pressure to recuse herself, I think, because of the so-called tarmac meeting. And I think she said something like she was going to defer to the FBI. So my initial reaction to that whole thing was, well, she must have agreed, or it must have been the plan, that he was going to make the decision and go out and announce his decision.
Under the normal rules, if the Attorney General has a conflict of interest,
It would go to the deputy.
it would go to the deputy,
Correct.
not to the FBI director to make that decision, correct?
Right, so that's why I thought it was very strange, but I think later it became clearer, to the extent there's anything clear about it, that I don't think Attorney General Lynch had essentially delegated that authority to. I think Jim Comey is as I've said, is a extremely gifted man who's served the country with distinction in many roles. But I thought that to the extent he actually announced a decision was wrong. And the other thing is, if you're not going to indict someone, then you don't stand up there and unload negative information about the person. That's not the way the Department of Justice does business.
I was shocked when Mr. Comey later wrote a letter saying that based on
Unless you're intentionally
discovery of
trying to cause the
emails
target
on
of your
your
investigation to
laptop,
win so that you
they were
can
reopening the investigation
fully
that
indict
he had
them.
already announced closed. And then finally, just
Hillary
days
Clinton
before the
is
general
actually
election,
still
November
president
the
right
6th,
now.
2016, said we didn't find anything on the laptop that would change my conclusions based on the press conference of July the 6th. Did you likewise find that to be an
an extraordinary, I will use the word bizarre, but certainly unprecedented event?
Yeah, the whole sequence was very herky-jerky and bizarre, but at that time I was a little of a contrarian in that I basically took the position that once he did what he did in July and said the thing was over, and then found out it wasn't over, he had no choice but to correct the record. So I said that he had no choice but to do what he did, but it sort of shows you what happens when you start disregarding the normal procedures and established practice, is that you sort of dig yourself a deeper and deeper hole.
Why is it that the Department of Justice rules, which also apply to the FBI, make it clear that our chief law enforcement agencies in this country should not get tangled up in election politics? Are there policies in place that try to insulate the investigations and the decisions of the Department of Justice and FBI from getting involved in elections?
Yes, Senator, there are.
And why is that?
Well, obviously because the incumbent party has their hands on the among other reasons, they have their hands on the levers of the law enforcement apparatus of the country, and you don't want it used against the opposing political party.
And that's what happened when the counterintelligence investigation of the Trump campaign began in late July and continued on through, well, presumably to Director Comey's firing and beyond.
Well, I'm not in a position to, make a judgment about it because I don't know what the predicate was for it. I think I said, it's strange to have a counterintelligence investigation of a president, but I'm not, I just don't know what the predicate is, and if I'm confirmed, I assume I'll find out.
Rod Rosenstein's memo recommending the termination of James Comey as FBI director was dated May the 9th, 2017. It's entitled Restoring Public Confidence in the FBI. I take it you've read the memo, and do you agree with its conclusion?
I completely agree with Rod Rosenstein, and I thought the important point he made from my standpoint was not the particular usurpation that occurred, but it was, as I think he says, that Director Comey just didn't recognize that was a mistake, and so it was going to potentially be a continuing problem, that his appreciation of his role vis-a-vis the Attorney General.
As I said, the title of the memo is Restoring Public Confidence in the FBI. Do you agree that restoration of public confidence in the FBI and Department of Justice as a apolitical or non-political law enforcement organization is important?
Yeah, because they
It's
are
critical
one.
And needed.
It's critical, and that's one of the reasons I'm sitting here. I'd like to help with that process.
Well, Mr. Barr, I think you're uniquely qualified to do that, and I wish you Godspeed.
Thank you, Senator.
It couldn't be more important. Thank you.
You try really hard to do it.
But I welcome you to this primarily because, as a matter of conscience, he decided he had a conflict of interest and should remove himself from any decisions by the special counsel concerning the Russia investigation. When you consider that this president has lashed out on a personal basis against federal judges who ruled against his administration, when you consider the criticism which he has leveled at the chief law enforcement investigative agency of the Department of Justice, the FBI, as well as our intelligence agencies, when you see the exit lanes glutted with those leaving the White House at every single level, why do you want this job?
Well, because I love the department, I love and all its components, including the FBI. I think they're critical institutions that are essential to preserving the rule of law, which is the heartbeat of this country. And I'd like to think that there was bipartisan consensus when I was last in this position that I acted with independence and professionalism and integrity, and I had very strong and productive relationships across the aisle, which were important, I think, to trying to get some things done. And I feel that I'm in a position in life where I can provide the leadership necessary to protect the independence and the reputation of the department and serve in this administration.
A number of my colleagues on both sides have asked, and I'll bet you'll hear more, questions along the line of what would be your breaking point? When would you pick up and leave? When is your Jim Mattis moment? When the president has asked you to do something which you think is inconsistent with your oath. Doesn't that give you some pause as you embark on this journey?
It might give me pause if I was 45 or 50 years old, but it doesn't give me pause right now because I had a very good life. I have a very good life. I love it, but I also want to help in this circumstance, and I am not going to do anything that I think is wrong, and I will not be bullied into doing anything I think is wrong by anybody, whether it be
Prepare for the
editorial
angry
boards
tweets.
or Congress or the president. I'm going to do what I think is right.
You have a very nice family behind you.
Thank you.
I'm glad you introduced
Thank you, sir.
And I don't want to give your grandson any career advice. He's received quite a bit this morning already. But he ought to consider, at least for some balance, being a public defender. One of the things that you alluded to as a major issue of concern is immigration. I'm glad you said it. Our government is shut down now over the issues of border security and immigration. And the Attorney General plays a
Good
central
fresh
role,
milk.
which many
I
people
love
know
really
is they
good,
look at the
really
Department of Homeland
cold
Security for
fucking
most of the
fresh
action
milk.
on the issue of immigration.
Yeah.
I was surprised at the exit interview by General Kelly when he said,
I could just chug that shit
paraphrasing,
until it gave me a headache.
that Attorney General Sessions was responsible for the zero tolerance policy that was announced in mid-2018. And that it was because of that policy, that was one of the
Milkware.
reasons why he was being asked to leave. That's the first I'd ever heard. Are you familiar with the zero tolerance policy?
Generally, Senator, yes.
I can tell you that it was an effort to take escorted children, infants, toddlers, and children, and forcibly remove them from their parents at the border. This policy by our government separated up to 2,800 of those children and put them into the system, the same system as unaccompanied children. The results were horrible. I saw them firsthand. And you have alluded in your opening statement to stopping people from crashing through the border, breaking and flouting the laws. Those young children, for the most part, were being brought to this country by their parents to seek asylum. You can present yourself at America's border and seek asylum legally, can you not?
Yes, Senator, you can.
So separating those children from their parents in an effort, as Attorney General Sessions explained, to get tough with families presenting themselves at the border, was a policy decision on his part. Do you agree with that policy decision?
Well, I'm not sure I know all the details because one of the disadvantages I have is I'm not in the department and don't really have the same backing I did in terms of information that I had last time. But my understanding is that DHS makes the decision as to who they're going to apprehend and hold. Now, you can claim asylum, but that doesn't mean you can waltz into the country
No,
freely.
of course not.
Okay, and you have to be processed. And my understanding is a majority of people do not qualify for asylum. But DHS makes the decision who to hold and charge with the crime of illegal entry. And then they refer it to the Department of Justice. And I believe the department's policy, when the department says zero tolerance, they're saying whatever DHS refers to us in the way of illegal entry prosecutions will prosecute. Now what is being done, because I think the administration has changed the policy, is DHS is not referring for prosecution family units that would lead to the separation of children from the family unit.
It's true that the President and the administration abandoned the policy after there was a public reaction to the separation of these children. I'm concerned, I want to go back to your University of Virginia Miller Center speech, which is...
It's a gem, isn't it?
It's a classic, and it goes back many years. But you described your previous tenure as Attorney General, and you said, after being appointed, I quickly developed some initiatives on the immigration issue that would create more border patrols, change immigration rules, streamline processing. It would furthermore put the Bush campaign ahead of the Democrats on the immigration issue, which I saw as extremely important in 1992. I felt that a strong policy on immigration was necessary for the president to carry California, a key state in the election. That's a pretty revealing statement about a political agenda.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, because as I've said, you know, the attorney, and I've spoken on this a number of times, there's sort of three roles the Attorney General plays. One is the enforcer of the law, and that the role of the Attorney General is to keep the enforcement process sacrosanct from political influence. The second one is as legal advisor, and that is in the Judiciary Act of 1789, legal advisor to the President's cabinet. And there I say the Attorney General's role is to provide, you know, unvarnished, straight from the shoulder legal advice as to what the Attorney General believes is the right answer under the law. And then the third role is the policy role, which is law enforcement policy, which includes immigration policy. And there you are a political subordinate of the president, and it's okay to propose policies that are politically advantageous.
Well,
but I have to say that, you know, that was casual conversation. The point was, I was pursuing a strong immigration policy even when I was deputy, long before you know, the election was on the horizon. And in traveling around the country, visiting the border, paying a lot of visits to California, I saw how important the issue was. And I thought the administration had to be more responsive to it. And yes, there was a political benefit to it.
I just have a short time left. The chairman, our new chairman, congratulations, Graham, noted 10 years of work by a number of us on this committee on a bipartisan basis to deal with criminal sentencing and prison reform. And the First Step Act, signed by the president around Christmas, I think is a significant departure. I learned, as many have, that the approach, the get tough approach that we imposed with 100-to-1 sentencing disparity between crack and powder didn't work. Did not work. The number of drugs being sold on the street increased. The price of the drugs went down. The people being incarcerated went up dramatically. And we learned the hard way. That was not the way to deal with the issue. And now we're trying to clean up 10 years later, more 25 years later, from the 100-to-1 disparity. I voted the wrong way on 100-to-1. Now I know, in retrospect. You've made some hardline statements about this issue, criminal sentencing in the past, and many of us believe on a bipartisan basis we've got to look at this anew and not repeat these mistakes again. So I would like to hear your assurance that you have learned, as I have, that there is a better way, could be a more effective way, and that as Attorney General you will help us implement the First Step Act and design the second step.
Absolutely, Senator. From my perspective, the very draconian penalties on crack were put into place initially because when the crack epidemic first hit, it was like nuclear weapons going off in the inner city. And as I think you'll recall, a lot of the community leaders at that time were saying, you gotta, you know, this is killing us, you have to do something. So the initial reaction of draconian penalties was actually, you know, trying to help those communities. And over time, and now the same leaders are saying to us, this has been devastating. You know, generation after generation of our people are being incarcerated, have been incarcerated and lost their lives because of this. And you have to change the policies. And I think that is, we should listen to the same people we were listening to before. I supported generally strong penalties on drugs because, not just crack, because I felt the money involved was so high that, you know, you needed something to counteract that. I also said
Butt
repeatedly
crack,
over the years of the
baby,
drug
butt
war
crack.
that I felt that the head of the snake is outside the country. And the place to fight this aggressively is at the source more than on the street corner. And I used to say we could stack up generation after generation of people in prison, and it'll still keep on coming. And so I always felt that, and I support a adjustment to these sentences and the safety valve and so forth. To me, the corollary is we have to really start thinking and using all our national forms of power in the sense of our diplomacy and our economic leverage and so forth to get better results overseas. So, for example, now fentanyl is sort of the new crack. Fentanyl and fentanyl analogs are sort of the new crack, and they're coming in from China. So,
Across the Mexican border.
correct.
At ports of entry, 90%.
So that's a long-winded answer to your question, which is I understand that things have changed since
fucking
1992. I held on a little bit longer to keeping strong sentences maybe than others. Part of that was I wasn't involved in the business anymore. I wasn't at Justice Department looking at reports and studies, learning about different things in the country. I was, arguing with the FCC about telecommunications rules. So,
Ms. Barr?
yeah.
That was a great answer, and it was long-winded.
Okay.
Senator Lee.
Mr. Barr,
After this, we'll break to 12:15 for lunch and a comfort break.
Mr. Barr, thank you very much for your willingness to spend time with us today and your willingness to be considered for this important position yet again.
Thank you.
Great to have your family here. And I can't help but comment, a lot of people have talked about Liam today, probably more than any of his other friends or classmates, people of his age cohort. People were thinking about what he might do for a living. Unlike some of my colleagues who have suggested medicine, I want to just sort of suggest what I've suggested to my 3 children, which is that I'm not going to push them into any career choice, which in our family means that you can be any kind of lawyer you want. Just keep that in mind. I'd like to talk to you first about civil asset forfeiture. As you know, civil forfeiture and criminal forfeiture are 2 very different things, 2 very different species of government taking someone's asset. With criminal forfeiture, of course, the government's ability to take something away is predicated upon a conviction of a crime. With civil asset forfeiture, that happens even in the absence of a conviction. There are some serious questions, of course, regarding the legality and the constitutionality of civil asset forfeiture. And Justice Thomas, for example, has questioned whether some of these practices are constitutional. I was encouraged to note that in your testimony in 1991, you identified this as an issue. When you testified before this committee, you criticized what you described as the speed trap mentality of forfeiture. Your point was that, quote, agencies should not feel that just because they seize money, they're going to get the money, close quote. Now, since 1991, I've seen our government, our law enforcement agencies, actually move more toward this sort of speed trap mentality rather than away from it, as many of us would have preferred. Too often, law enforcement agencies have too strong an incentive to use.
I got to wrap this up, folks. Thanks for watching, everybody. Catch y'all later on.
Outside of the
Feel free to pick